Welcome, Sunita Satyapal, to the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader. I'm very happy to have you here.
Thank you, Björn. It's an honor to be here.
As you know, with this podcast format, we try to inspire professionals to become hydrogen leaders in the hydrogen economy. And they learn about how others became successful, their unique insights, and what they want to share in terms of the development. So, to many of us in the hydrogen economy, I think, dear Sunita, you are the hydrogen leader in the US. And I understand that today you speak in your private capacity and not on behalf of the Department of Energy. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
So before we go into the subject of the hydrogen economy, I want to ask you a very basic question, Sunita, because I learned that you have some nicknames, yeah, it's like Jeanne d'Arc of the hydrogen economy or Beyoncé. Um, who is Sunita Satyapal? Please explain.
Well, thank you, Bjorn. And first of all, I just want to say thank you for your leadership and all your efforts, both with Hyfindr, but also for advancing leadership
Yeah,
in
thank you very
hydrogen.
much. Thank you. That is very kind of you.
And I've heard you ask this question before, who are you? And most people define themselves by their title or their position or their career. But as you said, I'm speaking, on behalf, not on behalf of my former role, just as a private citizen. So if you ask, who am I? Just, one regular human being, one out of over 8 billion human beings on the planet at the moment. And, but I thought I would answer just very literally, very scientifically and technically. And Sunita in Sanskrit, which is an ancient language, actually the precursor for Indo-European language,
Right.
means one who is good-natured.
Okay.
And not that I live up to it. And
Well,
um, Satyapal means protector of truth. And
okay.
so, literally, if you ask what is Sunita Satyapal, it translates to good-natured protector of truth.
Okay, and what are you passionate about to add a little bit of meat to that, Sunita?
Yeah, so basically, many things. I have lots of interests, but mostly in energy and obviously hydrogen, so I don't need to say that. But also the environment and really trying to give back to the community. And just like you, advancing leadership as well for the next generation.
Yeah, and if I may add, because in the preparation I learned about the big impact that you had on the US hydrogen economy. I think you have coordinated programs of roughly 10 billion US dollars to advance the hydrogen economy. You have been a director in the Department of Energy, leading a big team who is advancing not only hydrogen in the US, but as a global with a global impact. And I think we talk about that much more. But before we go into that, I think you are a very unusual subject because I think that you are the only hydrogen professional I personally know who has a song. And I want to do something very unusual, both for this podcast and also for me, because I want to perform this song for you, dear Sunita.
Sunita shines in energy's light, hydrogen queen, she's dynamite, turning clean dreams into might, fueling futures, she's the guide. She works on magic, day and night, at the lab it's burning bright, chasing carbon out of sight, setting stars to shine so bright. Sunita's dream is clean and green, hydrogen power unseen. She's the force, the beat supreme, making history. She's the beam. She's out there.
So I'm not the best singer, but I try to perform a little bit my lips. So I'm really curious, who wrote this song for you, Sunita?
Well, actually, I did get permission since you said you would ask me this question from the author, who actually used AI, apparently, to write it. And his name is Ryan Weiser. And it was a real surprise, actually. So several colleagues including him, had been working, really hard, many late nights and weekends. And I was about to board a plane on a business trip, and he sent me a chat message with this song. And I thought it was just so amazing. It was so hilarious. Actually, it's very amusing that someone could even think about it. So it's, really honored and humbled. But it really shows the dedication of so many people. So again, it's not really a song about me. It's really about, all the people that have been involved in hydrogen.
Yeah, but I think there are some statements which I think go to your very core. So you're the beam leading bold. Her vision is clean and green and fossil fuels out of sight. This is basically what you have been working on, right?
Yeah, although I do think that, again, I didn't write the song, but I do think we need a portfolio. So I think we need it, in the near term, fossil produced hydrogen with CCS. We need the whole portfolio. So
Yeah.
um, it's in the general, I think it's meant to be a song, more of an amusing song.
Yeah. No, I like it, and I could imagine that it was quite a surprise to you when you heard it the first time. So I had the idea for this podcast after seeing your post, which you did on April 20th. And I have not seen such a post in the hydrogen economy, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn for the last 5 years. And I think it got 2,500 likes and 500 comments. And it was about your leave at the Department of Energy. So, how many people have seen that post?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I was really honored and humbled. But I um I didn't look recently, but when I looked, the last time, it was over 102,000 impressions, and, I feel bad I haven't had a chance to look at everything, and I got lots of, private messages also,
Yeah,
which helped, so.
I could imagine. But please tell our audience what happened. Why are you leaving now the Department of Energy?
Yeah, thank you, and, as mentioned, I'm here just as a subject matter expert, just with many decades, um, was in industry and, did research, was a visiting professor, so, not my current role, and I can discuss, what's publicly available, and it's very public knowledge that the administration is looking to reduce the federal workforce. And there's an option called the DRP, or a Deferred Resignation Program. And that's one way to provide the opportunity for people to leave and get some, it's a little bit like a severance package. They have a certain amount of time, and it's voluntary, and then they could move on to something else. And it was very clear, and again, all this, public information, that if more people, more federal workers actually take the DRP, then fewer people would be, laid off. Or so it was clear that their plans for a RIF. A RIF stands for reduction in force. So it's a very
Right.
standard process. It's not that common, but again, if more people take the DRP, then many others will be saved in terms of their jobs. And so after almost 22 years, so in June it'll be 22 years since I started at DOE. Um, it's always, nothing goes on forever, and so it's a good opportunity to provide, um, again, opportunities for former staff and other junior federal workers to stay. And like you said, we need to think about the next generation of leadership. And so it was the Deferred Resignation Program, that I and many others across the government were taking.
So, what I read between the lines is that part of your decision to take it was that you give room to breathe for newcomers to advance in their career as well. Helping others again is a passion of you. So you think that with your move, you can help others to free the space that they are not terminated.
And I think it's not just, me. I think there are many people who have, thought about all the options and the pros and cons, and, with the effort to, again, reduce, funding, reduce the federal workforce,
Right.
that's, obviously, one option that I think many people were considering.
This sounds for me very neutral. So I go to work basically because I'm passionate about what I'm doing, and what I read through all the comments in your post, it seems that you are also very passionate. So I think it probably was a little bit more than a normal job to you, because you were really into it with your heart and soul. So I could imagine that this was also a harsh message for you to let it sink in.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, but I'm sure that the hydrogen economy has a good place for you to continue your great work. And in the preparation of this video, I learned that you have been even awarded presidential awards, right, in 2015 and 2022 from the president. So I guess this shows the extraordinary performance of you in your job and the magnitude of your impact. Yeah. So I think I see a lot of awards on your in your room. Are they also there?
Yes, thank you. And also, Bjorn, though, I do want to emphasize that everything is it's in life. I think it's a team effort. So
Mm.
there's just so many people. Again, I'm just one person out of many. As you know, there's so many involved in hydrogen and fuel
Yeah.
cells across government industry, and I think all of this really shows the solidarity. Um, and again, the whole team, those who came before too, and those who are new, those
Yeah.
who moved on. So many offices, stakeholders, and labs, and universities, industry players, global partners, and there's so many. So I think a lot of both the recognitions and also all the comments are really, um, in some ways, really shows the unity of hydrogen. I always talk about
Yeah,
that
you're right.
line and really bringing everyone together. So
This is also something which motivates me, and what I really like about this industry, because when you talk to people, you always feel they are in a helping mood. And I interpret it in a way that everybody knows that we will still need to mature the industry, but it will be very big, and the cake will be big enough for everybody. But first, we need to mature it. And therefore, everybody's helping each other. And this is something I enjoy a lot as well. Yeah. Please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel. If you like the content, it helps a lot to grow the channel. Thank you very much. So coming now to your insights in the hydrogen economy, where do you see currently the state of the US hydrogen economy?
I think there's, not just in the US, but even globally, I think we're at a critical time. So, in many ways, there have been lots of ups and downs for hydrogen, um, funding, policies, and we've seen lots of industry support as well. Um, but I think now, uh, again, there's lots of progress. I don't want to be negative because there's lots of progress. But again, I think we need to wait and see whether we can really scale up. I think, cost is still high. We still have infrastructure issues, and then sustained offtake, um, is critical too. So it's not just the production of hydrogen, but how do we have that sustained offtake and really get to scale to make it commercially viable? So I think it's an important time, in industry.
Um, Oh, let me share an impression that I had. So when we got to the US for the first time and exhibited in the Houston show um, 2 years ago, I think my impression was people were talking to me and say, "Tell me about this hydrogen. What is it?" And then in the the last year when we went there, we were talking to people and say that came to us and say, I'm investing in hydrogen. Can you help me find customers? Right? And we will be there again in June. So I'm curious how now the overall sentiment is. And basically, the sentiment, as I understood it, improved a lot through this Inflation Reduction Act from the Biden administration. Can you explain what this legislation did to the industry and how impactful it was?
Yeah, thank you. And the Inflation Reduction Act and also the IIJA, the Infrastructure Investment Jobs Act, and sometimes it's called the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or the bill. Those were really important in the US, and there were many stakeholders involved and really provided a significant boost to hydrogen, actually, to many areas, including hydrogen. And maybe the most talked about is the hydrogen production tax credit, the 45V tax credit. And this would allow subsidy for producing hydrogen as high as $3 a
Right,
kilogram, as long as the carbon intensity is low. But
right.
there are other tax credits too included. So like refueling infrastructure and others. But 45V, I think, received the most attention, especially because the cost of hydrogen is really high,
Yeah.
well, especially from renewables. But it's not just the IRA and IIJA. I just want to emphasize there are also a lot of state initiatives. Like California, for instance, has been a real leader over the decades. Um, other, uh, for example, mandates on the vehicle side, low carbon fuel standard, but we still don't know the ultimate fate. In the U.S., we have Congress, we have the House and the Senate. The Ways and Means Committee just started marking up. So again, it provided lots and lots of momentum and interest, and
Yeah.
of course the hydrogen hubs. There's a lot going on, but you're right. The bottom line, as you said, both pieces of legislation were really positive in many areas, and including hydrogen.
Yeah, I think even in Europe they were talked about to be a little bit unfair because they were so powerful, yeah, and we were not able to do something similar, which is impactful immediately because in Europe, as you know, public funding needs to be applied for, and then it takes a lot of time to get approval. But if you work with tax credits, the people can invest and then can get a refund and they get advice from their tax advisor. And that is normally much quicker. And I have been advocating for this for a long time. We now also have a new government in Germany. We will see how this will play out in terms of investment. Yeah. So you also now in the US have a new administration under the lead of Donald Trump. And I think one of the uh, initiatives he has taken is he signed an executive order on energy dominance. And when you read that order, and I did this, you don't read anything about hydrogen. So it's more or less you hear this message, drill the baby drill, which is related to fossil fuels mainly, as I understand it. So I ask myself, what does this mean for the hydrogen hubs nowadays? If you, on the one hand side, 2 years ago had this big initiative creating these hydrogen hubs, and now there is this sentiment of let's do energy dominance based on fossil fuel. Is this now all dead, or is it still valid and advancing?
Um, Thank you, Bjorn. And of course, as we said, I can't speak on behalf of the government or
Yeah,
administration. And but I do want to go back to one thing you said earlier about the hydrogen production tax credit
right.
and remind everyone that in the US, we produce 10 million metric tons of hydrogen, the second largest amount in the world behind China, which is over 33. In 2020, their estimate was 33 million metric tons. And most of our hydrogen comes from natural gas. And the cost is really, really low. It's only, $1.50. And
Yes.
so, in order to really, make hydrogen competitive, for different end uses, we have to have a large tax credit because, for
Yes.
example, if you use renewables, and depending on the cost, electricity capacity factor, it's over $5, $7. So even though many complained that the tax credit was really large, in the U.S. again, because we're all trying to get to competitive, large scale with hydrogen, but because the cost of hydrogen is so low,
It's so high, you mean?
we need
Yeah, yeah.
that.
And so the gray hydrogen. Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yes. And I think going back to your question, I think there's lots of different opportunities, a portfolio of opportunities. And so getting to scale, like when you ask, are the tax credits, the previous legislation still relevant now? Um, and again, based on what industry says, many industry stakeholders, they've been very vocal that it's still very relevant
Mhm.
because the cost is still really high.
Yeah.
And so there are many areas that are needed, not just production, but even midstream infrastructure. The offtake is really critical. So all of these different types of legislation that can boost production, midstream infrastructure, offtake are all still really critical.
Yeah. And so if I understand you correct, you still believe that hydrogen has a role to play, but there are also other options that we should explore and not rule out.
Yes, definitely. And I know sometimes I'm thought of as just the main hydrogen person, but I really believe that we need the overall portfolio solutions. And I've never said that hydrogen is the only way to go. Some people,
Yeah.
say that. And so I've always been, more balanced. Um, and there are many benefits. So versatility, the fact that you can produce it in, virtually any country from different resources. So energy security, of course, it's a carbon-free molecule. So many countries see it's needed to decarbonize, especially heavy industries. Um, and it's a chemical commodity. We need it for ammonia, for refining most of that today, steel manufacturing, others, if we can get the cost down, long duration energy storage, resiliency. So it's, of course, climate has been a big focus, but there are many other advantages as well. But again, it's
Yeah.
one piece in a really broad portfolio. So we'll need electrification, efficiency improvements, I think are really critical as well. Sometimes they're overlooked.
Yeah.
But thank you for asking that. So I definitely feel like it's one part of a really um, critical overarching portfolio that's needed for all of us to make progress.
And what are the challenges that is preventing widespread of hydrogen and fuel cell? Is it only the hydrogen price, or do you see other challenges that we need to overcome?
Yeah, thank you for asking that because I think, and you've probably seen as well, that hydrogen has often been overhyped.
Hmm.
I was in industry as well, lots of plans being made. And there's lots of progress, but there's still a lot of challenges. And cost, as you said, is really high. There's lack of infrastructure, even the conversion technologies. So fuel cell costs are still high. And there hasn't been sustained momentum. When I think back, my 3 decades, whether it's industry or government or research, just the lack of sustained momentum. There's just been lots of ups and downs. And right now, as I said before, I think one of the biggest challenges is sustained commercially viable offtake. And that will help that incentivize the investments and the production, the whole value chain. And I think hydrogen is really really challenging. If we focus only on the production without the offtake, we can have stranded assets, and
Yeah.
so we really need the entire value chain. So I think again, there's multiple challenges.
Okay. And in terms of innovations and advancements in technology or in business models, what are you most excited about in the hydrogen space or in the fuel cell space?
That's an area that's always been of interest to me. So there are many, probably too many to name.
Yeah.
I'm excited both by the research, so some new areas, new players. For example, alkaline exchange membranes that can reduce dependence on platinum group metals. And I have to say, in the last 2 decades, I saw over 1,000 patents through previous funding, but also in systems integration and deployment. So, how do you optimize systems? And many people might not be familiar with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act
Mhm.
from, over maybe 15 years ago. And at that time, about 40 million of government funding helped to support first of a kind demonstrations like the forklifts, hydrogen fuel cell forklifts,
Yeah,
and companies like Plug Power,
Plug
for
Power.
instance,
Yeah,
in the US. And now at warehouses, completely zero emissions was needed. So it was a very niche application.
yeah.
So it's not just, and now there's 70,000.
Yeah, that's quite a number.
Yeah. And so when you ask about innovation, and of course for you also, since you're in Germany, I know there are passenger trains in service. Stationary power for fuel cells is really exciting, especially for data centers now. A lot of interest in data centers. So when I think of innovation, it's not only the early research, but also on the demonstration and deployment side.
Actually, on this data center, let's stay there for a minute because through the AI revolution, I guess the entire world is building data centers. And funny enough, recently spoke to somebody who asked me, Björn, we have big investors. They want to build lots of data centers with, let's say, a backup power or a sustainable energy source. But when I did my research, it is hard to bring enough energy to these data centers these days, which is really green. Because, as you said, we are lacking the infrastructure for this amount of green energy. Did I miss something? Are you seeing innovations that can help power even data centers for AI usage, completely zero emission?
Well, there's definitely interest by industry. I'm looking at different options. So right now, in terms of using diesel generators, is not really
Yeah.
viable. And even decades ago, when I was in industry, um, we had fuel cells using natural gas, but they're much more efficient than
Mhm.
just combustion. So even in the interim, using natural gas um, can provide that efficiency and reliability and resiliency as opposed to diesel. And then, of course, there's interest, if you can use hydrogen from, nuclear and other sources, and you can store that. So for long duration storage. And there's also some interest in having multiple revenue streams. So not just the hydrogen for power,
Okay.
but in certain regions, the trucks or um, lift trucks. So again, it's an early space, but one there's a lot of interest in.
Yes. Um, Now coming to a little bit, how do you see the future? I recently also recorded a podcast which I very much enjoyed, just like here, with Professor Hebling from Fraunhofer, and he was of the view that the hydrogen economy will develop regionally. What he means that there will be local hydrogen ecosystems that connect over time to a national and then a global hydrogen industry. Do you think that this is the way how it will happen, or do you have a unique view in the US or on global hydrogen economy?
Yeah, I think from the personal perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense in the IIJA legislation. Also, it specifically required that producers and end users and the hydrogen infrastructure connected or in close proximity was required for the hub. So that really helps to incentivize the ecosystem and help maximize both the production and the offtake more locally. And it helps avoid, again, the stranded assets or the high cost if you're transporting hydrogen long distances. And even going back, I know decades ago in Japan with Fukuoka, they had the similar concept with the hydrogen town and to help, jumpstart
Yeah.
hydrogen locally.
Yeah, and I basically also think this concept is more or less the 7 hydrogen hubs in the US. You start with some nucleus. And I have also been in China. There they have these demonstration zones where they try to build something connected at a certain place and then copy this and scale it nationally. Yeah. So we recently also have seen lots of discussions and some investments also on the topic of natural hydrogen or white hydrogen. And I think they found also in Canada, in the US, fields of natural hydrogen. Can you explain what this is? And what do you think is the potential of this field?
Yeah, there's a lot of interest now globally in natural or geologic hydrogen. So certain regions, subsurface, in their different mechanisms. But for instance, certain iron-rich regions where hydrogen can be produced. And back in the 1980s, I think a famous example in the country of Mali, where
Yeah.
accidentally hydrogen was found. And there are many companies now around the world looking at it. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, and others have estimated potentially even 5 trillion tons. But how accessible is it? What's the cost? Where is it located? And how sustainable is it? Like, how quickly would it be depleted? How do you stimulate it? There's so many questions. And so it's definitely an area of interest. And I think a good example where there are many new companies, but also traditional companies that are exploring this space right now.
Yeah, so I just spoke to Eric Schäfer, who is very involved in this space in Germany, and he explained that there's a good chance that with this we will be able to get the cost of hydrogen down to $1 or euro a kilogram. That would be something very important. I think you also had this moonshot initiative on targeting a hydrogen price of one US dollar for a kilo, right?
Yeah, and again, because in the US, hydrogen is only $1.50.
Yeah, so that's basically the target which we have to achieve, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Um, so my thinking was, as you were visiting also many places internationally and know a lot of people, you might have implemented in the past also initiatives that you have seen internationally. So, what do you think? Which countries are currently paving the way in the hydrogen space uh, uh, outside of the US?
Yeah, there are actually many countries. I think roughly 60 of them have national strategies, and they're all different. In fact, in the US, when we talk about $1 or 150, that's just the production piece. And of course, that's, the long-term goal. But depending on the market, if it's like heavy duty trucks, then even, $5, $6, that's sufficient to get good market penetration delivered and dispensed. And again, it depends on the application. And so depending on like transportation, like some countries like Japan has always been a leader in hydrogen, especially in transportation, some of the companies there. And since Fukushima, they also prioritized residential fuel cells. If you remember, they have over 500,000. I
Yes.
remember seeing that years ago on natural gas, in fact, is a stepping stone. Korea also, like Japan, has to import energy. So looking at climate goals, and also has, strong transportation players, also stationary fuel cell players. And as you know, Germany is, of course, the main major leader, and as well as see the Netherlands, France, other parts of Europe. And then also South Africa, for example, produces most of the platinum in the world, so they have
Yeah.
vested interest, and now more places in the Middle East. India's ramping up. There's so many actually, so I don't wanna, miss any, but there are many that are interested, and they have different I guess, opportunities, some for imports, some for exports. And then, of course, China, I need to mention as well, already the world's largest producer, 33 million metric tons, 3 times more than the US, which is the second largest, and really ramping up. So they have 60% of the electrolyzer manufacturing capacity globally. I think about 70% of global deployments are electrolyzers coming from China, ramping up trucks and in general. So I think other countries are starting to take notice also of the growth there.
Yeah, exactly. So um, this is interesting to hear that when I sum up this part on the economy, I what I read from you is basically that it's good. It's a global initiative. There is still a longer way to go, but many opportunities but also still many challenges that we need to work on to get this into a mature technology that is economically viable. So we wrap this up, and now let's talk about leadership and motivation. Yeah, because we learned a little bit about your work already, but I would like to ask you, what motivates you generally to go to work? What what drives you in that sense?
Well, thank you, Bjorn. And since you mentioned that I should tell some stories, something that's maybe a little more personal, um, I can say just having impact is really critical. And I grew up in New York and wanted to in a house full of scientists and
Yeah.
engineers, and have to say that always want to give credit to my parents. My father actually came to the U.S. On a cargo ship
Okay.
without, before I was born, with essentially without a penny, and it was
Okay.
completely self-made. He ended up getting a PhD in
Right.
agriculture and uh, soil chemistry and from Michigan State University, and ended up becoming a director at the United Nations
Wow.
Development Program. And it was always
Okay.
about giving back, like you said, giving back, in this case, in developing countries, helping with food production. And then my mother got her PhD in physics a long time ago in the 1960s before she was married, which was unusual for women, nuclear theoretical physics. And then she became
Yeah.
a professor, retired now. And I have
Yeah.
one sister, she's an astrophysics professor.
Oh wow.
Another sister is double engineer in electrical and ocean engineering. And so we have a very nerdy family, but it's always about giving back, not just the passion for science and
Yeah.
technology, but going back at Columbia University, where I got my PhD, I actually worked on hydrogen, not hydrogen as we know it, but atomic hydrogen, so
Okay.
layer induced fluorescence of detecting atomic
Okay.
hydrogen.
Right.
But I was really interested in the applied perspective. So when you go back to asking, what motivates me, um, having impact. And so whether I did many different things. I was a visiting professor. I thought I wanted to be a professor and I love teaching, but I'm very impatient and I didn't like
Mhm.
grading. So
Okay. Okay.
uh, I worked in industry and United Technologies, which was a leader in fuel cells, as you might know. Every
Mhm.
American manned space mission had used UTC fuel cells, and I also got sucked into managements. But then I
Wait a second.
really
I have been to the Houston uh, Space Center, and there is a little exhibition, and there is
Mhm.
also a little prototype with a fuel cell. And I made a picture of it, and I think it's very old. But I thought, well, wait a second, that is interesting here that they showcase the connection of the space industry in the early days also with fuel cell. And that was probably the time where you also got linked to that, right?
Yeah, well, they started even before in the
Yeah.
50s and the 60s, and I was there in the 90s.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to Gemini and before that, and of course, the space shuttle had fuel cells,
Yeah.
which my old company had worked on that as well.
Yeah. It's great.
Eh, yeah,
So
having yes.
bottom line, the academics world was your family, but you wanted to have this application impact, and this is why you went into the industry and ended up also in your leadership role at the Department of Energy, if I understand it correct.
Yeah, I think having impact, of course, not just one company, but being able to raise the tide so all the ships go up. So how do you have the most possible impact was one of the big drivers there.
Yeah, um, great. And your leadership approach, because I think your team was pretty big. How would you describe your leadership motto? I can tell you mine afterwards, but I want to hear you first.
Well, actually learned a lot. I don't have like a specific formula. And I
Okay.
think many times for scientists or engineers that get promoted quickly and when they're young, they learn a lot on the job. So I was originally very driven, very results focused, and maybe a little impatient. But over time, I think really focusing on the people is
Yeah,
my biggest priority and their passion. How do we help them to succeed?
yeah,
And look for, of course, you look for excellence. So very having very high standards was also important, but really being collaborative is really critical as well. And so those are some of the examples.
yeah. I read in your LinkedIn profile that you highlighted this, that you are very proud of identifying and selecting highly talented staff. Um, and how did you actually find out if somebody is really meeting this criteria of excellence? Is it the CV that you get, or what are you looking for when you hire people?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's always a hard one, I think, for, the hiring managers, and I've had hundreds of employees and or staff or students over the decades, and, I think one thing that you look for is what is the values too. I think the underlying foundation of integrity, personal integrity, the passion, of course, the technical depending on what, position you're looking for, the technical background, experience, but looking for their passion and what are they truly interested in? It's not just and most people I think that we know in this field across the world, they're just so dedicated, and it's not just a job, a 9 to 5 job. So that dedication, responsiveness. I think also looking were they able to deliver? So that comes with time as well. So it's
Yeah,
not just dedication, but can they actually and I've always been, very, action oriented as well. So, but being collaborative, transparency, communication, those are some of the basic um, skills. But I think also, and sometimes this is a little bit harder to um, describe, but sometimes you meet people who, and over the years, especially in industry, it would meet people, they were so focused on their own career and how do they progress. And I would often say you can't build a tree house without a tree. And
mm,
it's so important to have that strong foundation
yeah,
and um, be willing to roll up your sleeves, do the work. It's not about the personal ego and building that team where it's really that team spirit. And then I think the other one maybe to add, which is a little bit difficult too, but having tenacity, like perseverance, is
mhm,
really critical as well. That
yeah,
things will not always be easy, and you not only can enjoy
yeah, yeah.
your job. So having that sense of um, tenacity is
Yeah.
critical.
I noticed that many people outside the US seem to cheer you up as well. So, what were you focusing on when you were building these international connections that you needed to advance the global hydrogen economy? Was there a specific approach that you tried to apply?
I think it's very similar. So, in other words, and going back to hydrogen, many times I think about unity. And
Mhm.
very often I would tell this story many years ago when I had a bicycle accident and I fell down this cliff.
Okay.
And I had to be taken out with the oxygen mask and
Oh,
on stretcher coming down the cliff and is in the hospital. And I noticed if your brain is ever in this state of trauma, like
yeah.
it thinks very differently. And I
Okay.
noticed when I had my broken arm that I lifted up, and my other arm came, like, immediately to
Yeah.
help. Like, there was no separation, there was no concern or, ego or, "Will I have funding?" Or there was no hesitation. And so when I think about the global, um, community for hydrogen too, I feel like everyone's really trying to help each other. How do we succeed? It's not gonna be just one country or one company or one organization that succeeds. And so having that common vision, recognizing we really need all hands on deck to be successful, I think is the vision.
Is there anything looking back that you would do differently? Not in a meaning that you regret things, but you are now a more knowledgeable person. What would you do differently looking back on your professional life so far?
That's always really hard to say.
Yes, this is why I ask you.
And I'm not sure. I think maybe just learning as much as possible. So sometimes maybe I was too impatient and again
Too result driven.
yeah, too results driven. But I think also just I wasn't looking for positions. So even in industry, I wasn't really looking to be a manager or not even looking for, my previous position. And so it just seemed like it was the right role that, others wanted me to take it, whether it was previous staff or bosses or others. So it wasn't really planned. I think certain things happened, and so some of it was coincidence, and so it's hard to say if I would do how much I would do differently. It wasn't
Yeah.
really none of it was planned, so it's difficult to say.
Yeah. So I personally think that if you would ask me that question, I think I I would say I should have been bolder in certain situations in the past. I think I'm pretty bold now. I was bold at the beginning of my career, but in the middle, I lost a little bit this being bold sentiment, and I try to be bold when it matters and to stand up what you're looking for. And so probably that would be my answer, but this is a very personal question, and thank you for sharing this. Yeah, so coming now a little bit to the outlook, and I read a quote that you shared from Amit Ray, and I want to read it out because I like it so much. And I said, "A bird is safe in its nest, but that's not what its wings are for." And as you shared this, I wanted to ask, what is the meaning of this quote for you, and how will it impact your future life?
Yeah, thank you, Bjorn, for mentioning that. And it's really meant for people who are in some ways afraid to leave or to make a change. Like you were saying, to take initiative, to make a change, to be bold. And the point is that many people don't get out of their comfort zone and leaving the nest. And whether it's a job or where you're living or deciding on careers, and the point and life is so short, and realizing that you have so much potential, and leaving the nest can allow one to discover their wings. Everyone has wings, and to actually fly, and that's what birds are meant to do. And again, since we're on this earth for such a short time, people should not be afraid to try new things, see how they can have impact, and not get stuck in a cul-de-sac. um, and so that's really the meaning there.
Yeah, great. So we are obviously most interested to know where you will fly to now. Do you have any specific plans that you can share? Will you still be in the hydrogen economy in some way?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And I still don't know exactly. I was really honored getting various ideas and offers, and as mentioned in my LinkedIn post, also for lots of former staff, former federal workers too, looking for ideas out there of how to have the most possible impact. So I don't know at the moment what exactly I will do.
So I can tell you something because I became an entrepreneur at the age of 50, so you might want to start your own business. Yeah, so it's very rewarding. You need to be bold, but you are the chief of your own destiny, right? So I think this was very insightful for me. I'm so honored that I got to know you a little bit better now. I think you are a very humbled person, and that your impact is way bigger than the impression that you are trying to give with your words. And I think the global hydrogen economy appreciated all the work that you did in the 30 years of your service. And I think I can speak also on behalf of many that we wish you all the best for your future career. I understand that there will be also a little bit of time of traveling coming up, which is great. So I hope to see you very soon back in the hydrogen economy in some very impactful role where you can still be the beam for all of us and continue your work and guide us towards maturing this technology for the better of the society. Thank you very much, Sunita.
Thank you so much, Bjorn.